neighborhood correspond to some aspect of the comprehensive plan, because it's just not a matter of a neighborhood voting uniformly to do one thing or another. The zoning plan has to take into account the overall good of the town and not just what one particular landowner or group of landowners want.
So I think what will happen is
that area has clearly shifted towards residential, so there might indeed be something to look at there.
So I think what will happen is that, talking to CJ earlier today, to produce a narrative with the input of the Emmons Road residents, to, as we go from what it was to what it is now to what we see in the future, and link that to the comprehensive plan as the guideline to transform this over into what they think as the future of that area they would like it to be. And I think that's probably where we are right now. But I think that narrative is extremely important so the planning board can say, okay, these are the reasons why you want to do this. And maybe that's why we have these conversations before the planning board working meeting, so that narrative is there. Hopefully we'll do it a week before so the planning board can at least look at it and try to digest it before they have that discussion. So I think we're on schedule, considering we've had 2 days to try to address this, to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to point out the comprehensive plan aspect of it, because clearly that area has changed since it was originally zoned RA back in the probably 70s. So.
Well, and as we know, at least from my opinion, when they had the zoning concerns back in the 70s, the RA basically is the no-zone zone, is what it is. There's no zone, but there's a zone which is really what's limited out there. I mean, like you said, this nickname's reckless abandon, which means you can pretty well do anything. So having said that, that's one of the reasons why we met with the Ag Committee to go ahead and maybe streamline what the farmers wanted, so they would take it out of the RA and put it in the Ag districts. So having said that, I think we have a good idea, especially if we can use the comp plan as the guidance to do this, to validate why they want these changes, and hopefully we can get some positive results. Anything else before we move on? Okay. So I did want to
do we want to talk about the solar law as part of CJ's and how we're going to move forward on that?
Well, we can segue that into it now, Joe, if you want. I mean, once again, here we are with the open meetings law, right? And here we are, and how do you do that? What the hope was, if you're talking, are you talking about a schedule?
Yeah, just, it's on her update, so we could just lay out what we're planning on doing.
I thought we were going to talk about that at the work session.
We can go,
generally.
well, we have it under the work session as future town hall public hearings. So maybe we should wait till then.
Okay.
So if nothing else, we have the engineer's report.
Well, CJ?
Oh.
Yep. You were going to talk about the RFP at this point, I believe, right? For the park?
For the highway?
No, for the parks. Weren't you going to talk about the RFP for the Parks Trail Master Plan at this point?
We could talk about it now, more at the agenda item as desired.
Well,
It's on the consent agenda, so I think talking about it now would be good. That way we could go forward.
Okay.
Well, the reason it's on the consent agenda is so we don't talk about it, so,
right,
okay.
But Bronwyn had some questions, so
Okay.
I reached out to CJ, and she said she would talk about it during her report, so we could still leave it in the consent agenda.
Okay, that's fine, sure. So let's go right to that then.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can just give me a quick catching me up sort of thing, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see, I guess it was probably about 6 months ago that we started meeting with your predecessor on the board, Katrina, as well as Guy has chimed in on this RP as well, and Pat Terrell, and we sat down and said, what would we really need to do to advance a master plan for parks, recreations, and trails in the town? So in essence, we, over a series of months, came up with this request for proposal for a master plan. I won't go through the full scope of work, but there's a a fairly lengthy list of deliverables, as well as an emphasis on public engagement. And then finally, development of a draft Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, as well as a capital improvement implementation strategy with cost estimate level worksheets, or cost worksheets to essentially support that. So in essence, once we sat down and thought through this, it seemed reasonable to have a committee who would really be responsible for helping lead the charge, for which we developed the central thesis of a committee to advise the town board, parks, and planning on all matters relating to coordination, oversight, acquisition, development, funding, and programming of parks, recreation, and trail system throughout the town and village as possible. So a list of members was proposed back in, let's see, maybe it looks like November, and we had people, I believe, appointed to the committee in December or January. And so essentially they took the request for proposal from there, reviewed the documents, marked it up as they saw fit, made some changes. And we only had a few meetings, but before, the COVID, maybe one even or two. And they provided some good guidance and said, so yesterday afternoon, we met and the committee unanimously recommended that we advance the project. There was certainly some discussion about costs, and this all does actually harken back to a resolution passed in 2017. I could bring it up, I don't know by memory the resolution number, but does establish a capital reserve fund for parks, recreation, and trails planning. So in essence, this RFP is the embodiment of that larger goal, and our intention in releasing it now would be to run along a similar timeline to the Highway Department's RFP because of the way questions would be due and the proposals themselves, and then the review periods and interviews. So, however, there's no pressure or urgency to pass it right now, but it's perfectly fine to take more time that you need with it, no worries.
That sounds great, and thank you for filling me in on all the work that's happened so far.
Yeah, sorry I missed you.
No.
It's
been a little night. So what's the timeline for the work to be done by whoever gets this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the current proposed timeline of issuing the, let's see, what's the contract date here? I think it was maybe August or September. I estimate 18 to 24 months for the remainder of the project. It's a fairly sizable project with pretty significant budget and scope of work. So that's going to take some time, at least that, I would say.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
This RFP allows us to choose none of them if we decide that we can't afford to move forward with it.
Yes, this has a similar provision as the, and I just want to bring it up so I have it in front of me. Hold on just a moment. Okay. I believe there is a, yes, the town reserved the right to reject any and all proposals, cancel the entire RFP, remedy technical errors, and seek assistance in the evaluation process. So yes, there's a section on right to reject proposals.
I think there's a standard, that's a standard clause in probably all our RFPs, really, because we're not really obligated to pick one of them if they don't fit the criteria. We've done that before.
Yes, and I may be able to elaborate on that, but I believe he certainly reviewed this request for proposal, and I think he would have drawn that to my attention from this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, concerns we have before we move on to the consent agenda? If not, Andrea, you want to read? How many you want to read?
Well, we need to get the motion and the
We will.
second first.
We will. I was simply asking that question, but we can do that first, absolutely. It's going to happen
I'll
eventually.
I'll read 3 and then somebody else 3.
Do we need the motion first, though? as you
Okay,
say?
I'd like to move the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion authorizing Town of Lansing Supervisor to sign Lansing Youth Commission Program Agreement for 2020 between Cornell Cooperative Extension and the Town of Lansing. Next, motion authorizing Town of Lansing Supervisor to sign Insero and Company CPA LLP engagement letter dated April 23rd, 2020 for year ending December 31st, 2019. Number 3, motion approving the updated COVID-19 Executive Order 202.4 Essential Personnel Chart, April 2020.
D.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll keep going, okay.
Yeah.
D is motion authorizing the issuance of Park Recreation Trails Master Plan request for proposal. E is resolution requesting reduction of speed limit on Franklin Drive and Maple Drive. F is resolution hiring part-time seasonal employees for park and recreation for the town of Lansing. Does, Brown, you want to do the next 3? G, H, and I?
Sure. G is resolution accepting Susan Munson's retirement letter and appointing Jennifer Sandstead as Town of Lansing Information Aide. H is resolution approving bid and issuing award for Myers Park bulkhead project materials. And I is resolution declaring intent to establish lead agency pursuant to state Environmental Quality Review 6 NYCRR Part 617.6 for adoption of a local law of the town of Lansing to amend the land use ordinance relating to solar and wind energy systems proposed to be cited in the town of Lansing, New York.
Okay, Doug, you want to do J and K?
I don't have the full agenda, but I got the cover sheet.
Okay.
So J, resolution declaring intent to establish lead agency for adoption of local law
No, he must
to
have.
amend the land use
Okay.
ordinance related to solar and wind energy systems. And K,
Okay.
It changed.
Doug, that, you have an older edition, the newer one went out today, I'm sorry. Joe, you want to do J and K? My apologies, Doug.
Let's see, Alan? Yeah. J, resolution creating computer system support aid position. And K, resolution approving audit and budget modification and supervisor's report. And I have a quick question on the vouchers. I was told today that there were 3 more that got added in that I have not reviewed or seen. And I'm not sure if they're added into this voucher number, but I feel odd voting saying I reviewed vouchers I haven't had a chance to see.
Okay. Was the inability at 3:30?
Yeah.
I reviewed them and I signed off on the 3.
I signed off on the 3 also, Joe.
But it says here I reviewed them and I have not.
I can take your name off if you want me to, Joe.
Sure, because I didn't get to review the last 3 vouchers and I don't want to vote yes on a resolution that says I reviewed them.
Okay.
Okay.
So
It's
they
the
were-
last minute thing that makes it hard.
So they were
Reviewed by me.
Andra and
Ed.
Ed.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Day,
yes.
Brian Winlosey,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay, item 14, resolution authorizing the issuance of a $65,000 bond, anticipation renewal note, number 01-20.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry, Doug. I'll wait next time. Any further discussion? Ms. Mrs. Munson?
Yeah. Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losey,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay, item 15 is the resolution appointing members to Town of Lansing Broadband Committee.
I will also move that.
I'll second it.
Your name is on it. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe Doug should second it.
I'm
Second.
fine with that.
Okay, Doug?
actually-
Okay, will you second it, Doug?
I did.
Okay. Any discussion?
Any further discussion? My deputy supervisor jumps right in there, I like it.
Okay, so I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to have a little discussion.
Okay.
Oh, there is further discussion. Go ahead, Mrs. Munson.
So, in the resolution is Bronwyn, Losey, and Joseph Wetmore. So, maybe not legally, it doesn't matter for sure. I talked this over with Guy, but sort of might be best for Bronwyn and Joe to recuse themselves from voting on this. So you're not voting for yourself.
I was thinking about that.
I don't think there's a conflict, but if you want me to recuse myself, I'm fine recusing myself on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same, I don't mind.
Okay.
Andrew Benson,
Yes.
Doug Dake,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losey.
Dane, is that what I say?
Right.
No, not abstain, recuse.
Recuse. I'm recusing myself.
Thank you. Joseph Wetmore,
Recuse.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay, board member reports. We have a bunch of information from Bronwyn and Joe. Andrea, do you want to add anything?
No, I can't Zoom very well, so I didn't go to the one meeting for the
Bolton Point?
Fulton Point,
Okay.
but I was in contact with the Lansing Youth Services on the library, and I already commented.
Okay. Bronwyn, you want to add anything to your report?
The only thing to add or highlight is that the IO is wondering if we have thoughts on any projects that municipalities are interested in that they could help manage or apply for grants for. I'm still getting my footing there too, so I don't understand all the details, but they're looking at supporting people in the watershed on the lake, and if we have anything to bring to them, let me know. And
Okay.
I can do that.
Good. Thank you. Doug?
Regarding the planning board meeting on Monday, CJ, feel free, or Guy, feel free to jump in. Talked about the Penny Pride properties. The planning board shelved that. I guess there were some problems with the application. So I believe we left that as fill out the application more accurately, and then probably put it on discussion, I believe, the next meeting. With regard to his development there, we just talked about the dormitory issue on Forest Acre Drive, I believe. We already discussed that. Couple things on that, and I'm not sure, CJ, maybe you can help me on this, or Guy. Why would we not allow future development on that land?
It's a reasonable condition that the planning board could impose on the applicant. It's not that they wouldn't necessarily allow further development per se, but that no further subdivision of the smaller parcel would be permitted. You could put another structure on there, or you could do other development on it depending on what was allowed in the zoning, which I believe is R1 on that property, which is residential low density.
Okay.
And Guy probably has a piece to add on that as well, about imposing reasonable conditions.
I realize that the planning department has some leeway with that as far as what they're doing. It just seemed, me, it just seemed a little excessive, to not allow them just to subdivide it once. So that was my only thought. I mean, he could basically go do that through Lynn, I believe, if he wanted to withdraw that and then subdivide it, right?
Well, what the applicant is seeking now is to subdivide these parcels in this particular manner. There could be an alternate proposal, certainly. And like I said, it doesn't foreclose the opportunity of further development, only further subdivision. So
Okay.
they just wouldn't create a new tax parcel. But, Guy may be able to illuminate the nexus between the conditions. Nope, no audio.
If you want me to say more, I will. What happened is that, as you know, the Stormy View, that whole area was sort of developed in the sort of 40,000, the postage stamp of lot after lot after lot, high density, although that is probably the wrong word for it, because 1 house an acre certainly isn't high density, but high density development, and it was always anticipated that those subdivisions would continue on south, and that you would need roadway connections there. And back in the 90s, I think it was, the old future proposed highway interconnection map for that area was simply carried forward in the last comprehensive plan. But what it showed was each of those streets having north-south connections, and that whole open space completely interlaced with roadway systems. And the reality turned out, or at least the planning board is considering, that it might be more realistic to recognize that after 15 or 20 years with no additional development, that having all that roadway infrastructure and all that maintenance responsibility and all that stormwater runoff, it might be a better idea to look at where, given the change in what has happened in development patterns in that area, where roads might be needed. And one of them could theoretically still be argued as needed as coming into this particular parcel of land, or you could go to the west at Stormy View, where there was in fact further development at one time proposed. And that ties into the map that T.G. Miller generated, showing alternative ways of making sure that you had through connections to all your major roads for both access as well as fire safety. And from the developer's perspective, one, he has a lot that is not truly fully buildable. At least it seems to have a lot of areas that aren't suitable for building because of wetlands, at least for his own report. And secondly, if the road can't go through there, then the planning board didn't want to see subdivisions or more housing there. And the flip side of this is that unless the lot is a flag lot, i.e. the town sells the land, or he gets an area variance, he doesn't have the frontage necessary to put a house there. So it's sort of like you got a situation where there are logical solutions, but not necessarily straight and easy answers.
Okay, understood.
I don't mean to be flippant about it, but you have rules, and one size does not fit all when it comes to real estate. There's rivers and gorges and wetlands and all sorts of things that make each piece of property a little bit unique.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, both of you. The last item they talked about, well, not the last item, but was a Bretton Woods major subdivision, right off Triphammer Road, just north of Asbury Road. And Tim Buell, engineer, went over his design of what it was, and basically seemed favorable with the planning board as far as that. Obviously, there's some other issues that they had, small issues, but I think that looks like a nice project, at least from my eyes. I know after that we talked quite a bit about discussion of the sewer district, and then also the town center, based on the sewer district, and lands we could take and put in and take out for, farming and things of that nature, and where we want development. And I don't know, CJ, on your end, I know it seemed like, we didn't, I don't want to say didn't get anything done, but it just seemed like we're stuck in the same spot. And maybe I'm wrong with that. Certainly with certain different industrial and retail, we talked about that, commercial, and also rental properties that will go in there, in the different areas in and around basically the sewer or access to the sewer. So I don't know how far we got with SCA, but with
Well,
that
yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Essentially, what we've done is refer, as requested by the town board, the town center incentive zone maps to the planning board for at least their initial review. I seem to have not done as good a job in explaining the relationship between, incentivizing area in development in areas that already have the required or planned infrastructure to support it. So I got some feedback from the planning board on what they're looking for to try to clarify these, and I also these incentive zone areas, and I did also pass along Assessor Jay Franklin's comments because I think they were really interesting. So I think they'd like to see most of the Warren Road sewer districts come out of an incentive, so that's largely built. Most of the Cherry Road sewer district, and then I think there'll be some questions over which lands they think are most appropriate as far as sewer district number 1 goes. But I think there was some consensus on the town center boundaries, although I think that will continue to play out as we get information back from the traffic engineers on the traffic impact study that's currently underway for town center, as well as that possible acquisition of the RBC unit at Lansing Residential Center. So I think those maps will continue to be further refined. So I have some direction from the board, but I think I would say their sentiment was feeling like, well, areas that already have water and sewer are incentivized just by the mere fact that they have water and sewer. But really, we can make these policies work together, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, when we both, direct the development to areas we actually want to see developed rather than farmland. So, thinking about how we can examine some of the fiscal impacts of particular development patterns. And I'm thinking, broadband, road, water, and sewer infrastructure, existing or planned. So we can start to have even more holistic viewpoint on this. And as it will inevitably impact future tax revenues, I mean, we'd obviously like to have, a higher per acre tax revenue, because land, of course, is finite, even for a 73 square mile municipality. So, there's a lot more discussion to have there, and it's great to do that kind of planning work with them, though, and start to figure out where this makes the most sense for everyone.
Well, that's all I got. I know it was more than I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm done.
I just want to point out, my screen says that there's 6 minutes of remaining time for this meeting.
Mine too.
Adjourn.
6:21.
It shouldn't say that, but
Guess we gotta go.
It shouldn't say that, but it does. Does that mean we're gonna be gone in 6 minutes? Yeah, keep it short.
Well, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a host or something.
Okay, Joe, you need to add anything to your report?
I just say that CJ and I are working on the Peter Wheeler grant. We got a request for more information, and we sent that off this week. So that'll be decided probably in July.
Okay. Anything else?
I would, if I've got a moment, I will just mention that I'm really worried about both the Ludloville Bridge and big bridge being out at the same time, and it looks like right now they're both going to be under construction at the same time.
Okay, anything else?
I think everything else is written down there, but I think that's a really important thing that we should be thinking.
I wish we had some pull on either one of those bridges.
Well, one's a county, one's a state, and once,
'Cause-
and you look at the fire chief's comments on that, as far as, you know, these things may change again, so we don't know. The good news is that at least the Myers Road is in good shape, and the shoulders are wide now, thanks to the highway people, so
Yep.
that may be a main artery from now on, so.
Yep.
So real quick, as the clock's ticking, I have a bunch of stuff to say, but I'll save it for next time, because it's all about the virus, amongst other things, but that can wait. Future town hall public hearings, I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier. What the hope is that we're allowed back in the building for public hearings for the public. That's what the hope is. And what the plan is, and I always say hopefully, because these things are subject to change, is to set the public hearings at our next meeting, and we've got 3 of them, maybe 4.
There's 4.
There's 4. And we can push back the override of the tax cap by probably the codification and the solar law public hearing. Those are, when was the 4th one? I know, I did the same thing, I'm drawing a blank here. But to move those forward, to set the public hearing in June and have the hearing in July. That's what the hope is.
Okay.
Was that?
I think we're going to have to move forward on these public hearings one way or another, and if they aren't opening up, we're going to have to go to Plan B, because we can't wait forever to do all these public hearings.
Well, by our next meeting, we'll have an action plan in place, so how do you hold a public hearing virtual? If we're not allowed to open up the building, so that's Plan B. So, once again, we may be forced to do virtual public hearings. And that's okay, they've been done, but let's see where this goes. So that's another option. We'll let the environment, so to speak, dictate which way we go with this. But the plan is, either way, to set the public hearing in June and have them in July.
Sounds good, Ed.
Good job, Ed.
Any other comments?
I think our 6 minutes is.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Yep.
Press that button.
Okay, guys.